Alpha King Torric Hale let them scatter Mara Venn's moon sleep sand across the werewolf dormitory floor because his council wanted proof that warriors did not need rest before war. They called it a test. Mara knew a punishment when it wore ceremony. The dormitory stretched beneath the northern barracks like a buried cathedral for exhausted beasts. Long rows of black stone sleep slabs ran beneath iron rafters. Winter wind moved through the high vents, carrying the smell of old blood, wet fur, smoke-soaked leather, and the bitter root drafts used to keep wolves marching after their bodies had begged for collapse. 47 war-wolves lay across the slabs in half-shifted sleep, some in fur, some in skin, some trapped in the brutal shape between. Their claws scratched stone, even while their eyes stayed closed. They were not resting. They were surviving the dark. Mara knelt beside the first row, with a silver bowl pressed to her ribs. Inside it, moon-sleep sand glimmered like crushed stars under milk glass. She placed 3 grains beneath the breathing mat of each wolf. Not more. Never more. Enough to cool the edge of a battle-rage dream before it learned the scent of pack blood. Enough to guide a sleeping wolf away from the memory of teeth in a brother's throat. "Look at her," one young shield captain muttered from the archway, "tucking monsters in." Laughter moved down the line of soldiers. Mara did not look up. If she looked up, they would see the part of her that still bruised, not from fists. From years of being told that a woman who counted breaths beside sleeping wolves did not understand war because she knew the sound a warrior made before he broke. War Sleeper Carden Rusk stood at the center aisle, with his arms folded behind his back. He was older than most commanders, narrow-faced, gray at the temples, dressed in a dark leather coat marked with the sleep authority of the War Council. He had the calm expression of a man who had never once apologized to a body he used. "Enough," Carden said. "Remove the bowl." Mara's fingers tightened around the rim. "The 3rd row has not been set. The 3rd row marches at dawn. That is why they need it." One of the wolves on the 3rd row shuddered in his sleep. His hind claws gouged the stone once, then again. Beneath his closed lids, his eyes moved too fast. Dream rage, early, dangerous. Mara rose and started toward him. Carden blocked her path. "You were instructed to stop. He is slipping. He is strengthening." Mara stared at him. "That is not strength." Carden smiled faintly, as if she had recited a child's prayer in a war room. "This pack has grown weak around your little rituals. Sand beneath mats, warm cloths over muzzles, breath counting. I have indulged it because the old rest laws are inconvenient, but the council requires clarity before the Iron Pine March." At the name Iron Pine, the dormitory quieted. Even the soldiers at the archway stopped smiling. Before dawn, 5 war units would run north through Iron Pine Pass, where the rebel frost packs had broken 3 watchtowers in a single week. If Torric's warwolves did not leave before sunrise, the pass could fall. If they left unstable, they might tear through their own command line before seeing an enemy. Mara knew both truths. That was why she had not slept in 2 nights. "The sand does not weaken them," she said. "It holds the last safe path inside the dream." Moonsleep sand did not make wolves gentle. It marked the last road inside a dream before the dream turned its teeth toward home. Carden's eyes cooled. Warwolves do not require safe paths. They require obedience. No, waking wolves require obedience. Sleeping wolves require mercy, or they wake hunting what they love. A shadow fell across the aisle before Carden could answer. Every soldier straightened. The wolves did not. That was the first thing Mara noticed when Alpha King Torric Hale entered the dormitory. Power changed the room, but it did not calm the sleeping beasts. His command presence filled the buried hall like winter pressure before a storm. He wore black war leathers, clasped with a silver wolf skull at the throat. His hair was dark and cut close at the sides, longer at the crown, pushed back from a face made harsh by responsibility rather than age. A scar split his lower lip and vanished into a short beard. His eyes were pale gray, cold enough to look silver under torchlight. He was feared because he did not raise his voice. Men lowered theirs around him. Mara bowed because refusal would make Carden's work easier. Torric's gaze moved over the wolves, then the bowl in her hands. "This is the sand?" "Yes, Majesty." Carden stepped in smoothly. "Moon sleep sand. gathered under old rest law and applied by Mara Venn without current war approval. With approval from the rest ledger, Mara said, the rest ledger is not command law. It becomes command law when battle rage appears in sleep. Carden's mouth tightened. You hear how she speaks, Majesty? As if nightmares outrank orders. Mara looked at Torric then. She should not have. His attention was dangerous, sharp and unreadable. But beneath the severe set of his mouth, beneath the authority held like a blade, she saw exhaustion so deep it had learned to stand upright. A faint tremor moved once at his right hand before he closed it into a fist. His wolf had not slept cleanly either. Not for weeks. Perhaps not since the last Iron Pine retreat. The knowledge struck her before she could protect her face. Torric saw her see it. His eyes narrowed. What does the sand do? He asked. Mara answered carefully. It does not force sleep. It does not drug them. It catches the moment before battle. Rage chooses a familiar scent. And if it is removed, the dreams continue without a guide. Carden laughed softly. Majesty, the Iron Pine march cannot be delayed because a rest keeper fears dreams. Outside the dormitory, the first dawn horn sounded from the northern wall. Torric heard it. So did Mara. So did every man waiting to see whether the Alpha King would choose war discipline or a woman with a bowl of silver dust. Carden lowered his voice. Let me prove it. Scatter the sand. If the wolves are strong, they sleep through it. If they wake, she has been interfering with combat readiness. That is not a fair test, Mara said. Carden looked at her. It was not designed to flatter you. His face was calm, but Mara finally understood the rot beneath it. Carden did not want rested wolves. Rested wolves remembered who had driven them past breaking. Torric's jaw hardened. Mara Venn, step back. Her throat closed. Not because she had expected kindness. Because she had expected a king with a werewolf inside him to recognize the edge of madness when it breathed in the room. Majesty, she said, if you scatter it, do not wake them by horn. Carden seized the warning instantly. A threat. No, a warning. Torric stared at her for one long breath. For a moment, she thought he might ask why. Instead, he said, remove her from the row. The order passed through her ribs like cold iron. 2 guards came forward. Mara did not fight them. Fighting would let Carden call her unstable. She only held the bowl tighter until one guard pried it from her fingers. Carden took it. He tipped the moon sleep sand into his palm, then threw it across the central aisle. Silver grains scattered over stone. Some landed beneath the slabs. Some caught in fur. Some vanished into cracks. The soldiers laughed again, louder now that the king had allowed them permission. Then every torch in the dormitory bent sideways. The laughter died. The scattered grains rose from the floor. Not falling, not settling, rising. Silver dust lifted into the air around each sleeping werewolf, grain by grain, until the dormitory filled with a cold, moonlit shimmer. One wolf exhaled. Another turned his head. A third stopped clawing the stone. Then the first dream shadow appeared above the nearest slab. A wolf made of silver sleep and old blood, standing behind the body of the warrior it had once belonged to. Then another, and another. 47 sleeping wolves breathed as one. Mara went still between the guards. Torric looked from the rising sand to her face. Every wolf in the werewolf dormitory opened its mouth without waking, and spoke in one broken voice. If the horn wakes us, we kill our own. The warning left the wolves' mouths without waking them. 47 voices, one broken sentence, spoken from throats that still breathed in sleep. The sound moved through the werewolf dormitory like a blade, drawn slowly across bone. If the horn wakes us, we kill our own. No soldier laughed this time. The guards holding Mara loosened their grip without realizing it. Across the rows of black stone slabs, the sleeping werewolves remained motionless beneath the rising silver sand. Their mouths closed. Their claws stopped scraping. Above each body, a dream shadow stood in moonlit outline, wolves made of mist, old blood, and memory. Their eyes turned toward the northern wall, where the dawn horn waited. Torric Hale did not move. That frightened Mara more than shouting would have. The Alpha King stood in the center aisle with his face cut from winter, one hand closed at his side, the other resting near the silver wolf skull clasp at his throat. His gaze moved over each sleeping warrior, each dream shadow, each strand of silver sand floating like a road no waking man could walk. Then he looked at Carden Rusk. "Explain." Carden's expression tightened for the space of one breath. Then he recovered. "A sleep echo, Majesty. Nothing more. The sand has made their dreams speak in chorus." Mara pulled free of the guards. "No." Carden turned on her. "You were removed from the row, and they are still asleep because the sand rose after you scattered it." Mara stepped into the aisle, careful not to cross the floating silver lines. "It is not protecting me. It is holding them." Carden gave a short, humorless laugh. "From a horn?" "From the trigger the horn has become." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Torric's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Mara pointed to the dream shadows. "Moonsleep sand marks the last safe path inside battle rage. When you scattered it, the grains followed the path instead of staying beneath the mats. Look at them. Every shadow is facing north. Every dream has turned toward the same sound." "The dawn horn," Torric said. "Yes." Carden shook his head. "Convenient." "No," Mara said. "Terrible." Outside, from high above the barracks, the horn tower gave its first preparation knock. A dull iron strike. Not the horn itself, only the warning that the hornmaster had lifted the mouthpiece. Every dream shadow flinched. Not the bodies, the dreams. Mara's stomach turned cold. On the third row, the wolf who had been slipping earlier bared his teeth without waking. His dream shadow opened its silver mouth and silently bit toward the nearest sleeping comrade. Torric saw it. So did Carden. "Majesty," Mara said, "order the horn stopped." Carden stepped in front of her. "If the dawn horn does not sound, the Iron Pine units miss march call. If they miss march call, the rebel frost packs cross the pass. This is exactly what weakness costs." Mara stared at him. "You would wake them into slaughter to avoid admitting you broke them. I hardened them. You frayed them." Carden's eyes went flat. "Enough." He turned toward the archway and lifted his hand. "Sound the dawn horn." The order struck faster than Mara could breathe. Torric's head snapped toward him. "I did not command that." Carden did not lower his hand. "War Sleeper Authority governs dormitory wake cycles during campaign readiness. You approved emergency discipline for Iron Pine." Mara saw the trap then. Torric had given Carden authority over sleep. Carden was using it before the king could take it back without appearing uncertain in front of the war ranks. The second preparation knock sounded. The dream shadows trembled. Silver sand began to spin harder, forming thin rings around each sleeping wolf's head. The wolves' breathing changed. Too fast now, too shallow, as if all 47 bodies had begun running inside the same nightmare. "Mararan." A guard grabbed for her sleeve. She tore free, leaving cloth in his fist, and sprinted down the central aisle toward the horn chain near the dormitory arch. It was not the tower horn itself, only the lower pull that signaled readiness upward. If it rang, the hornmaster would sound full dawn. Carden reached her first. He caught her by the arm and twisted her back. Pain flashed white through her shoulder. "Soft hands should not touch war signals," he said. Mara drove her heel into his boot. He staggered. She seized the horn chain with both hands and wrapped it once around her wrist. "Release it," Carden snarled. "No." The third preparation knock struck above. The dream shadows howled without sound. A sleeping wolf on the nearest slab jerked so hard the stone cracked beneath his claws. Another turned toward the soldier beside him, lips peeling back from teeth. The bodies were still asleep, but the dreams were nearly through. Torric moved then. Not toward Carden, toward the nearest waking wolf. For a heartbeat, Mara thought he meant to dominate them by alpha command. Instead, he placed himself between two sleep slabs, shoulders squared, throat exposed to the pack he ruled. "Hold," he said. The command rolled through the room. The wolves shuddered, but did not settle. Mara felt the chain biting into her wrist. "Majesty, command will not reach where the dream has already turned." Torric looked at her across the aisle. It cost him to ask. She saw that. Kings hated needing answers from those they had just ignored. "What will?" "End the trigger." Carden's voice sharpened. "If she stops the horn, she stops the march." Mara looked at Torric. "If the horn sounds, you lose the pack before the pass." The final readiness click sounded overhead. Mara pulled the lower horn chain backward with all her strength and hooked it around the iron wall bracket, jamming the signal mechanism. Above, the hornmaster tried to blow. Only a strangled brass groan came through the tower pipe. The dream shadows froze. Then, one by one, they turned away from the northern wall. The wolves exhaled. Not healed, not safe, but held. Torric stared at the jammed chain, then at Mara's bleeding wrist where the iron links had cut skin. Carden's face had gone pale with fury. "She has sabotaged the Iron Pine March." "No," Mara said, breathing hard. "I kept 47 wolves from waking into blood rage." Carden pointed at her. "You cannot prove what they would have done." The silver sand answered. It gathered above the third row, forming one large dream shadow instead of 47 small ones. A werewolf shape rose higher than the others, massive, scarred across the muzzle, its outline darker at the chest. Every soldier stepped back. Mara did too, because that shadow was not tied to a sleeping wolf on the slabs. It turned toward Torric. The Alpha King went still. The dream shadow opened its mouth. This time, it did not speak in chorus. It spoke in Torric Hale's voice. "I heard the horn at Iron Pine." The dormitory fell silent. Torric's face changed before he could stop it. Mara did not need to ask whose wolf had spoken. The shadow lowered its head, silver sand spilling from its jaws like cold blood. Then it spoke again. Carden's mark was on the bitter root before retreat. Every eye turned to the War Sleeper. Carden did not move. Behind him, one of the black drinking troughs cracked down the center. A pool of bitter root draft leaked across the stone, and beneath the silver sleep sand, it began to foam dark. The bitter root draft foamed where the moon sleep sand touched it. Not white, dark. The liquid spread from the cracked trough in a slow black pool, hissing softly against the silver grains as if two hidden laws had found each other in the stone. The smell rose next. Bitter root, iron, cold pine, and beneath it something sharper, something that did not belong in any rest draft meant for living wolves. Mara crouched before the spill. Torric's shadow fell across her shoulder. "Do not touch it," he said. She did not look back. "I was not going to." Carden Rusk laughed once, hard and dismissive. "It is old draft reacting to moon sand. Nothing more. War medicine curdles when mixed with lower room charms." Mara studied the foam. It did not bubble randomly. It formed thin, dark veins through the silver dust, each one crawling north, toward the horn tower. "No," she said. "This was made to answer the horn." The soldiers near the arch shifted back. One of the sleeping wolves whimpered without waking. The sound was small enough to shame the whole room. Torric's voice came low. "Explain." Mara lifted one grain of moon sleep sand on the edge of a broken splinter from the trough. The grain glowed silver. The moment it touched the black foam, the light bent inward and vanished, swallowed like moonlight under ice. "Bitter root keeps the body marching when it should collapse," she said. "That is lawful in short measure. Ugly, but lawful." She looked at Carden. "This is not only bitter root." Carden's expression hardened. "Careful, rest keeper. You keep saying that when you mean, be quiet." Torric's eyes cut to her. "Not warning. Attention." Mara forced herself to continue. Something was added. "It cuts dream, rest. The body sleeps, but the battle rage cannot drain. It circles, builds, waits for the strongest command, sound it knows." "The horn," Torric said. "Yes, the horn does not wake them. It opens what the draft kept trapped." Carden stepped forward. "Majesty, this is theory spoken by a woman who sabotaged March Call." Mara rose. "Then test the troughs." Silence. Carden's jaw flexed once. "There. Fear again, hidden under discipline." Torric saw it too. "All troughs," Mara said. "Open them." Carden turned sharply. "That is impossible before Iron Pine. The werewolves need measured draft after waking. If she pours out the barracks medicine, she cripples 5 units before battle." "If the medicine is clean," Mara said, "the sand will not answer." Carden faced Torric. "Majesty, you know campaign law. War Sleeper Authority controls sleep draft stores during active march readiness. She has no standing to demand exposure of sealed supplies." Torric looked at the sleeping wolves. 47 bodies breathed under moonlit sand. Dream shadows stood above them, no longer facing north, but not gone. Held in place by a woman the council had called softness, and a bowl Carden had scattered as proof. Then Torric looked at Mara's bleeding wrist where the horn chain had cut her. His face did not soften, but something in it shifted from doubt to debt. "Open the troughs," he said. Carden went still. "Majesty, now." No one moved for half a breath. Then the first soldier obeyed. He struck the iron latch beneath the nearest trough. A narrow panel opened at the base, releasing a thin stream of bitter root into the drainage groove. Mara scattered 3 grains of moonsleep sand across it. Nothing happened. The liquid stayed brown and still. "Clean," she said. Carden seized the word. "You see? She has delayed us for 1 cracked trough." Mara moved to the next. 3 grains. "No foam." The next. "No foam." A murmur began among the soldiers, turning toward Carden's side again, because men frightened by truth would always welcome a clean answer too early. Then Mara reached the 3rd row. The wolf on the slab nearest her was the one who had nearly turned toward his comrade. His mouth was open, breath catching behind his teeth. A scar crossed his chest where old battle claws had split him from shoulder to ribs. Mara remembered setting sand beneath him the night after Blackmere Ridge. He had sobbed in sleep then, a full-grown werewolf crying without sound into his own fur. She opened his trough. The draft slid out black. Before the sand touched it, Carden said, "That unit received stronger dosage." Mara dropped the grains. The liquid foamed dark. The wolf shadow above the slab jerked backward, as if struck. Its silver chest opened, and inside it, Mara saw a line of black frost curled around the heart of the dream. The dormitory recoiled. "Black frost root," Mara whispered. Torric's head turned slowly toward Carden. Carden lifted both hands. "Used in microdose for rage endurance under emergency campaign law. Not in sleep drafts," Mara said. "In Va. Sleep is not war. To wolves like these, everything is war." The answer came too quickly. "Too practiced." Mara stared at him. "That is what you taught them." Torric took 1 step forward. "How many?" Carden did not answer. Mara moved down the 3rd row, opening trough after trough. Clean. Dark. Dark. Clean. Dark. Each dark foam rose only where moonsleep sand touched draft mixed with black frost root. Each reaction pulled a brief image from the sleeping wolf above it. A horn sounding too close, snow under paws, command collars left behind on training posts, jaws snapping at familiar fur, Carden's mark stamped on ration slates. Not enough to convict everything. Enough to make denial bleed. Torric watched every image. With each one, the silence around him grew colder. At the end of the row, Mara found a trough marked with a double iron notch. She paused. Carden's voice cut across the room. "That is not for her." Torric looked at the mark. So did the soldiers. Mara had worked in the werewolf dormitory long enough to know every shared water line, every sleep slab, every ration shelf, but she had never been allowed near double-notched vessels. They were royal issue, sealed, delivered by War Sleeper Hand. Torric's private draft. The room changed around the knowledge. Carden moved fast. "Majesty, your draft is prepared separately for Alpha Strain. It will react differently to any." "Open it," Torric said. Carden's mouth closed. Mara hesitated, not from fear of the trough, but from the man standing beside it. If this foamed, Carden's crime would no longer be against exhausted werewolves alone. It would be inside the king's own sleep. Torric looked at her. For the first time since he had entered the dormitory, his voice lost command and became something rawer. "Do it." Mara opened the double-notched trough. The draft that spilled out was clear. Carden exhaled. Then Mara dropped 3 grains of moonsleep sand. The liquid went black, not slowly, all at once. Dark foam surged over the stone, swallowing the silver grains and rising in the shape of a massive wolf shadow with pale gray eyes, its chest split by a black frost line. Torric staggered once before he caught himself. The dream shadow lifted its head. The sleeping werewolves turned toward it without waking. Carden's face had gone empty. Mara stared at the king's poisoned trough and felt the true shape of the trap open beneath them. Someone had not only broken the werewolves before Iron Pine, someone had made sure Torric Hale carried the same fracture. The royal wolf shadow opened its mouth, but before it could speak, every torch in the dormitory went out. Darkness did not swallow the war wolf dormitory. The moon sleep sand refused to let it. Silver grains hung in the air like a broken constellation, circling 47 sleeping bodies and one massive royal wolf shadow at the end of the third row. Without torchlight, the dream shadows looked sharper. Every scar, every torn ear, every blood-dark line across their chests showed through the silver haze as if sleep had stripped away rank, armor, and command. Soldiers cursed in the dark. A blade scraped from its sheath. "Hold," Torric said. One word. Every living man froze. The sleeping wolves did not wake, but their shadows turned toward his voice. The royal wolf shadow stood before Torric's private trough, pale-eyed and split through the chest by black frost. Its jaws opened again. Carden moved first, not toward the wolves, toward the cracked trough. Mara saw the movement because the foam still glowed where the sand touched it. She lunged across the aisle and slammed her palm over the trough's drain slit before Carden's boot could kick the broken vessel aside. Pain flashed through her wrist. Black foam soaked her fingers. Carden looked down at her with cold fury. "Move." "No. You are contaminating royal medicine. You were about to drain it. It is unstable. So are the wolves you fed it to." His hand closed around her upper arm. Torric's voice cut through the dark. "Release her." Carden did, but slowly enough to remind the room he had once been trusted with sleep authority. "Majesty, this is exactly how panic spreads. She has turned a draft reaction into theater. We have a march to make." Mara kept her hand pressed over the drain. The black foam crawled between her fingers, cold as buried snow. If this empties, the sand loses the trace. Carden turned to the soldiers. "Listen to her. She admits the proof depends on her sand." "No," Mara said. "It depends on what your draft tries to hide." The royal wolf shadow growled. "Not allowed." Inside every sleeping wolf's throat. The sound rolled across the slabs, and all 47 bodies answered with a shudder. Torric stepped closer to his own shadow. "Speak." Carden's eyes sharpened. "Majesty, I would advise against taking command from a dream fracture." Torric did not look at him. "I was not asking you." The wolf shadow lowered its head until its silver muzzle almost touched the black foam. When it spoke, the voice was Torric's, but broken by sleep. Iron Pine was not the first horn. The dormitory went still. Mara's fingers tightened over the drain. Carden said, "Battle dreams distort sequence." The shadow continued. No banners, no enemy, no snow. Its chest opened wider, and within the silver shape, Mara saw an image, the same dormitory, darker, emptier, with war wolves chained by sleep, restraints at the ankles. A horn sounded from somewhere inside the room. Wolves jerked awake with red in their eyes. Carden stood at the center aisle, calm and watchful, holding a slate board marked with drill lines. The image vanished. A soldier whispered, "Rage drill." Carden turned sharply. "Campaign conditioning." Mara looked up. "Illegal in sleep. Temporary stress exposure," Carden said. "You blew a horn into drugged dreams until they bit toward pack scent. I taught them to attack through fear. You taught them to wake without knowing friend from enemy." Torric's hand closed over the silver wolf skull clasped at his throat. His face had gone pale under the moon sand glow. "Was I there?" he asked. Carden answered too fast. "You were recovering from Iron Pine." The royal wolf shadow bared its teeth. "Before Iron Pine," it said. The words changed the room. Before Iron Pine meant Carden had not treated damage from the retreat. He had prepared it. The nightmares had not begun because the war wolves broke in battle. They had entered battle already carrying fracture. Mara felt the true cruelty settle over her skin. Carden did not want rested wolves. Rested wolves remembered the training. Torric looked at Carden, as if seeing him from the far side of a battlefield. "You ran rage drills before the pass." Carden lifted his chin. "Under emergency readiness authority." "Signed by whom?" "You granted broad sleeper authority." "That was not my question." Carden's mouth tightened. "My mark was on the draft. My office supervised the drills, all lawful, under campaign pressure." Mara heard what he did not say. His office? Not his hand alone. Not his guilt alone, if he could bury it under procedure. The black foam under her palm pulsed. Moon sleep sand lifted from the floor and settled over her wet fingers, turning the foam briefly silver at the edges. Another image rose from the trough, a line of drinking bowls, black frost root shaved into each draught, Carden's mark stamped on the measure slate, and beside it, a second impression pressed over the corner. Not re-edible. Not yet. Mara leaned closer. Carden saw her focus and moved. This time, he did not reach for the trough. He reached into his coat. Torric stepped between them. Hands where I can see them. Carden froze. For the first time, real anger broke through his discipline. Majesty, if you let a rest keeper turn dream fragments into command law, you will not have an army by sunrise. If I ignore her, I may not have one alive. The words struck the soldiers harder than any accusation. Mara looked at Torric then, and the pull between them shifted in a way she did not have room to understand. Not softness, not trust, something more dangerous. A king beginning to stand inside the truth that had wounded him. The royal wolf shadow trembled. Its outline flickered, dragged toward the horn tower again by the memory of sound. Mara rose, black foam dripping from her hand. Torric looked at her. What? Your wolf. Do not command it. It has been commanded through the wound. If you push, the fracture answers. His jaw tightened. Then what do I do? The question was quiet. The room heard anyway. Mara stepped to the edge of the royal shadow, close enough for its cold, dream breath to touch her face. Tell it where it is. Torric stared at the massive shape. Then, before his soldiers, before Carden, before 47 sleeping werewolves, the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. Carden's face went white. Torric placed one hand on the stone floor, not touching the shadow, only near it. You are in the dormitory, he said, voice rough. Not Iron Pine, not the drill room, not retreat. The royal wolf shadow shuddered. Mara scattered 3 grains of sand between Torric's hand and the shadow's paws. The grains formed a thin silver road. The shadow stepped onto it. For one breath, Torric stopped breathing. Then the royal wolf spoke again. The horn that broke us was not the dawn horn. Carden's hand twitched inside his coat. A small object slipped from his sleeve and struck the stone. Not a weapon. A narrow black horn, carved from frost root bone. It rolled through the silver sand and stopped at Mara's feet. The royal wolf shadow lowered its head toward it. That one, it said. No one touched the black horn. It lay in the silver sand at Mara's feet, narrow as a dead bird bone, carved with grooves too fine for a war signal and too cruel for a child's whistle. Frost root had been polished until it shone like wet iron. Along its mouthpiece, dark residue clung where breath had entered again and again. Mara did not bend for it. Neither did Torric. The royal wolf shadow stood over the horn with its head lowered, the black frost line in its chest pulsing in time with the foam beside the private trough. Across the dormitory, 47 dream shadows watched the object as if every nightmare in the room had found its original door. Carden Rusk spoke first. That is not mine. The lie was too quick. Torric's face did not change. No one accused you yet. Carden's mouth tightened. The implication is clear. A horn appears beside the rest, keeper during an illegal dream manifestation, and the room turns toward me because she has taught fear to wear my name. Mara looked at him. You dropped it. I dropped nothing. One of the younger soldiers swallowed. I saw something fall from his sleeve. Carden turned his head slowly. The soldier went pale. Torric saw that too. Pick it up, Torric said. Carden's eyes sharpened. Majesty, I advise against handling unknown dream instruments while sleep. Rage remains active. I did not tell you to advise me. Silence fell hard. Carden bent. Mara watched his hand. Not his face. His hand. He reached for the horn with 2 fingers, careful not to touch the mouthpiece. Before he could lift it, the silver sand beneath the horn rose in a thin spiral and wrapped around his wrist. Carden froze. The royal wolf shadow growled. Not at Mara, at Carden's hand. Black marks surfaced along the horn's side where the sand touched it. One War Sleeper mark, one ration authority notch, and a third mark burned so faintly it almost vanished beneath the polish. Mara leaned closer despite herself. Torric said, Can you read it? Not yet. Carden snatched his hand back. The sand fell. This is absurd. Moonsleep sand reacts to dream memory, not legal proof. Yes, Mara said, and memory is what you keep trying to drain. His eyes flashed. The royal wolf shadow lifted its head and spoke in Torric's voice. Lower now, more strained. Dark room, ankles bound, horn close, bitter root after. Several wolves whimpered without waking. Carden stepped away from the horn. Dream sequence distortion. The king's wolf is folding battlefield, training, and retreat into one fear. Image. Mara looked at the black horn. Then why does it smell like your coat? The soldiers nearest Carden shifted. Torric held out one hand. Mara. She looked up. Do not touch it bare. He removed the silver wolf skull clasp from his throat and tossed it at her feet. The gesture cut through the room. The clasp was not merely ornament. It held the authority of the Alpha King's war command. No one in the dormitory breathed when it struck the stone beside the horn. Use that, Torric said. Carden's face went still. Majesty, giving royal command medal to arrest, keeper in an active war dormitory. She stopped. The horn you ordered sounded. I gave a lawful wake command. You gave a death trigger. The words landed like a sentence. Not final yet, but close enough to bleed. Mara wrapped her fingers in her torn sleeve, lifted the silver clasp, and nudged the black horn onto its side. The moment royal metal touched frostroot bone, the silver sand around it flared. The dormitory changed. Not the walls. The dream. A vision rose from the horn and spread above the central aisle. The War Wolf dormitory, as it had been weeks earlier, with torches dimmed to blue, sleep chains looped loosely around 47 ankles, black bowls set beneath every slab, and Carden, walking between the rows with the horn in one hand. No one spoke. In the vision, a younger attendant whispered, They need rest, Master Rusk. Carden answered, They need to wake killing before the enemy teaches them how. Then he lifted the black horn and blew. The sound did not enter the waking room, but every sleeping wolf arched on its slab. Mara's stomach twisted. The dream shadows in the present shuddered, as if remembering pain through another body. Torric watched the vision of his wolves being trained to wake into rage, and something in his expression went colder than anger. Anger moved. This did not. This settled. Then the vision shifted. A figure stood near the back of the old dormitory, half in shadow. Broad-shouldered, crowned by wolf authority. Torric. The soldiers looked from the vision to their king. Carden whispered, There. Mara understood too late. The trap had more than one door. In the vision, Shadow Torric stood silent while Carden's horn broke the wolves awake. Carden turned to the waking room with grief so false it almost looked polished. Majesty, you see? The dream itself remembers royal witness. If I overstepped, I did so under your presence. Torric did not speak. The shadow version of him in the vision did not move either. Mara stared harder. Something was wrong. The shoulders were right. The command clasp was right. The dark war leathers were right. But the head remained bowed, the face hidden by hood shadow. And the real Torric, beside her, had gone so still that she knew before he said it. I was not in this room. Carden's voice sharpened. Your wolf remembers otherwise. No, Mara said. Every eye turned to her. She stepped closer to the vision, heart pounding. That is not memory. That is instruction placed inside memory. Carden laughed. Now she claims dreams can be forged. Not dreams. Mara pointed to the black bowls beneath the slabs. Triggers. The horn in the present began to tremble. The vision flickered. Torric's royal wolf shadow lunged toward the hooded figure, but the black frost line in its chest yanked it back. Carden saw the strain and made his move. He seized the black horn from the floor. Torric drew his blade. Too late. Carden blew one short note. The sound was thin, almost gentle. Every sleeping werewolf opened its eyes. Silver sand erupted around them. Mara screamed, Do not move. 47 bodies froze between sleep and waking, claws buried in stone, pupils black with rage. Their dream shadows tore halfway loose, snarling toward the soldiers nearest them. Torric stepped into the central aisle, ready to take the first attack himself. Carden lowered the horn, breathing hard. Now choose, Majesty. Kill the wolves before they turn, or let your rest keeper prove she can hold what she claims. Mara understood. He had forced exposure. If she failed, 47 wolves died. If she succeeded, The council would know she could walk inside battle-rage dreams. The silver sand rose around her like cold moonfire, and every werewolf turned its black eyes toward Mara. Mara did not step back. That was the first thing the war ranks saw. 47 wolves hung between sleep and slaughter, bodies raised from their slabs, claws buried in black stone, black rage shining through eyes that should not have opened until morning command. Their dream shadows strained behind them like beasts trapped in silver nets. One wrong sound, one drawn blade, one frightened soldier breathing too sharply, and the dormitory would become a butchered room before the Iron Pine March ever began. "Do not challenge them," Mara said. A shield captain lifted his spear anyway. Torric's voice cracked across the aisle. "Lower it." The spear dropped. Carden Rusk stood beside the central row with the black horn in his hand, breathing hard through his nose. He looked almost pleased now, though sweat shone at his temples. "There is your proof, Majesty. Her sand has made them answer her before command." "No," Mara said. "Your horn pulled them through the wound." "Then close it." The words were a trap, and everyone knew it. If she failed, Carden would call the wolves ruined by her rest work. If she succeeded, he would call her forbidden. Either way, he meant to turn her hands into evidence against her. Mara looked at the werewolves, not at their teeth, at their breathing. Too fast, too shallow, still inside the old horn note. She had 3 heartbeats before their bodies followed the rage. "Majesty," she said without turning, "if I step into their sleep path, no one wakes them by command." Torric's eyes locked on hers. "What happens if command reaches them?" "They follow the strongest wound. And if you fail, they kill the nearest living thing." Several soldiers backed toward the walls. Torric did not. Carden smiled. "Then perhaps the rest. Keeper should stand nearest." Torric's blade shifted toward him. Mara lifted one hand. "No." The Alpha King stopped. That mattered. She stepped into the center aisle, bare feet crossing the first line of silver sand. The cold went through her soles and up her bones. Moonsleep sand did not rise to crown her. It rose to mark the road no one else could see. The nearest wolf snarled. Mara lowered herself to one knee. "Not Iron Pine," she whispered. The wolf's jaws snapped inches from her face. Torric moved. "Do not," Mara said. He froze with violence, still gathered in every muscle. Mara kept her eyes on the wolf. "You are in the dormitory. Stone under paw. Pack beside you. No enemy in the room." The silver sand beneath the wolf brightened. Its dream shadow shuddered. One black pupil thinned to gray. Mara turned to the next. Not the drill room, not the horn, not the retreat. The second wolf's claws loosened from the slab. Then the third. Then the fourth. She moved down the row one breath at a time, speaking not comfort, but location. Truth simple enough for a wounded mind to hold. Stone. Dormitory. Pack. No enemy. No horn. Carden's expression changed. He had expected spell work, a chant, a forbidden mark, something dramatic enough to condemn. Instead, Mara gave exhausted wolves the one thing his drills had stolen. A way back to where they were. The silver sand rose higher, forming thin roads from each dream shadow to its sleeping body. The warwolves did not lie down, but they stopped turning toward the soldiers, their black eyes dimmed by degrees. Then Carden lifted the horn again. Torric crossed the aisle in one movement and seized his wrist. The bones did not break. Barely. "If you blow it," Torric said, "I will take the sound from your throat." Carden's smile trembled but did not disappear. "Threatening your war sleeper before witnesses will not cleanse your wolves." Mara looked back. "No, but the sand will." She reached the royal wolf shadow last. It stood taller than any of the others, silver and scarred, its chest split by a black frost line. Torric stood several paces behind it, breathing like a man trying not to meet the part of himself that had been made dangerous without permission. Mara did not touch the shadow. "Not Iron Pine," she said. The royal wolf's head lowered. "Not retreat." Its ears flattened. "Not the horn." Its chest opened around the black frost wound, and the dormitory vanished. Not fully, only enough for everyone to see what the dream had been hiding. The vision rose above the slabs again, the old drill room, the wolves chained in sleep, restraints, bitter root bowls at every head, Carden walking the aisle with the black horn. The hooded figure in royal war leathers stood at the back, wearing the Alpha Command clasp. Carden spoke quickly. "We have seen this." "No," Mara said. "You showed us the surface." She scattered her last handful of loose sand into the vision. Silver grains struck the hooded figure. The cloak burned away first, then the false command clasp, then the sent shadow. The figure underneath was not Torric. It was smaller, leaner, wearing a sleeper's dark coat beneath the borrowed royal cloak. A second war sleeper stood behind Carden in the memory, face hidden by a gray sleep mask, pressing Torric's command sent into the air from a strip of fur clasped inside his hand. The court soldiers whispered. Torric's face went deadly still. "Who is he?" he asked. Carden did not answer. The vision bent closer. Mara saw the masked sleeper pour black frost shavings into one bowl, then another, then pause at the double-notched vessel meant for the Alpha King's private draft. Not after Iron Pine. Before, Mara's stomach dropped. "This was prepared for you," she said to Torric. Carden snapped. "Speculation." The royal wolf shadow spoke over him. 2 sleeper marks. The black horn trembled in Torric's grip. Mara turned toward Carden. "You did not sign the draft alone." Carden's face hardened into silence. The nearest wolf growled. Not in rage now. Recognition. Mara stood, shaking from the cold of the sand. No wolf wakes until the black frost drafts are removed, the rage horn is destroyed, and the Iron Pine march is suspended. Carden laughed. "You do not command war law." "No," Mara said. "I command rest law when waking means massacre." The words seemed to strike the room itself. Silver sand gathered beneath her feet and spread outward, touching every sleep slab. One by one, the war wolves lowered their heads, not bowing, holding, choosing not to cross the last violent road. Torric looked at the wolves, then at Mara, then at the men who waited to see whether he would protect his authority or his pack. "The march is suspended," he said. Carden's face went white. "Majesty. And no wolf leaves this dormitory until Mara Venn says it can wake clean." The silence that followed was almost holy. Then the royal wolf shadow lifted its head toward the ceiling vents. A distant sound answered from above. Not the dawn horn. Another black horn, farther north, already blowing. Every sleeping wolf screamed without waking. The scream did not come from pain. It came from direction. 47 sleeping wolves cried out as one, their bodies still held to the slabs by silver dream roads, while their shadows strained toward the northern vents. The sound above them was faint, too far for ordinary ears, but the moon sleep sand heard it clearly. Every grain in the dormitory tilted toward the same point beyond the barracks, turning the air into a field of silver needles. Torric Hale lifted his head. His royal wolf shadow did the same. Carden Rusk recovered first because panic had always been easier for him to use than truth. "The frost packs," he said. "They have reached the outer ridge, Majesty. If that horn is theirs, Iron Pine has already begun." Mara did not take her eyes off the sand. "No." Carden's face tightened. "You cannot know that from dust. It is not dust." The distant horn sounded again. Short, thin, cruel. The wolves screamed without waking. Not loud this time, but inward, each throat catching as if a hand had tightened inside the dream. The shadow above the nearest slab twisted toward the soldier beside him, then snapped back when the silver road under its paws flared. Mara's knees nearly buckled. Holding 47 last safe paths was not something her body was meant to do. Moonsleep sand did not borrow strength gently. It took attention, breath, warmth, and the hidden places in the chest where grief lived. Torric saw her sway. He stepped toward her. Carden saw that too. "Majesty, do not let her delay another command. A second horn proves an attack. Wake the wolves. March them before the enemy reaches the gate." "If we wake them now," Mara said, "the enemy is whatever stands closest." Fear speaking. "No, pattern." She pointed to the floating grains. "If this were a frostpack signal, the sand would scatter outward. Threat sound. Unknown direction. The dream would search for enemy scent." Her hand shook, but she held it steady. "Look at it. Every grain knows the horn. Same root bone, same grooves, same breath. Cut. The sound is not foreign. It is kin to the one Carden dropped." The soldiers looked at the black horn still lying near Torric's boot. Torric's gaze moved slowly to Carden. Carden did not flinch. Campaign horns are often carved from the same stock. Mara looked at him. Rage horns are not campaign horns. That word shifted the room. Rage horn, not dawn horn, not war horn, not signal. A weapon small enough to hide in a sleeve. Torric bent and picked up the black horn with the silver wolf skull clasp instead of bare fingers. The frost root bone hissed against royal metal. The distant horn answered. The black horn in Torric's hand vibrated. Carden's face lost color. Torric's voice turned soft. You said it was not yours. It is not, but it knows the other. Carden lifted his chin. Then perhaps the rebels copied our drills. Our? Mara asked. For the first time, the word slipped from him too cleanly. Carden heard it after he said it. Torric did too. The royal wolf shadow growled low. Mara stepped closer to the black horn despite the cold rising from it. Majesty, place it in the sand. Carden snapped. Do not. Torric looked at him. Carden corrected himself. It may trigger them again. It already has, Mara said. Torric set the horn in the center aisle. Mara scattered 7 grains of moon sleep sand around it, more than she used for any wolf. Enough to mark a path not in a body but in a sound. The grains sank into the horn's grooves. A silver line shot from the bone across the floor. It did not run toward the northern gate. It ran beneath the slabs, under the dormitory, toward the old foundation stones beneath the royal command tower. The room went silent. Torric stared at the line. Inside the wall, Mara nodded. The second horn is not beyond Iron Pine. A soldier whispered, It is in the keep. Carden laughed once, but no one joined him. A dream trace drawn by illegal sand cannot accuse the keep. No, Torric said, but it can guide my men. He turned toward the nearest captain. Seal the northern gates. No unit marches. Send 2 squads to the royal command tower. Bring back whoever holds the horn alive. Carden stepped forward. If you seal the gates, the border houses will hear that the Alpha King panicked before dawn. Torric's eyes did not leave him. Let them hear I chose not to release broken wolves into my own ranks. The words moved through the dormitory with more force than command. Not because they were grand, because every soldier could see the wolves still shaking in their sleep. Mara looked at him then. The same king who had ordered her removed from the row now stood before the war ranks and named the damage he had almost ignored. It did not erase the harm. It made space for truth to continue breathing. The distant horn sounded a 3rd time. This note was longer. The silver roads under the wolves began to fray. Mara gasped. Torric caught her elbow before she fell. His hand was warm even through the cold of the sand. Tell me what to do, he said. Carden's eyes sharpened at that public surrender. So did every soldier's. Mara forced breath into her lungs. The wolves need an anchor stronger than the horn. Comment? No. Command is part of the wound. What then? Pack recognition. They must hear who they are before the horn tells them what to kill. Torric looked at the rows. 47 wolves. 47 names he had commanded into war, but perhaps not spoken in rest. Mara saw the realization strike him like shame. He stepped to the first slab. The wolf there trembled, half fur, half man, one scarred hand clawing stone. Torric lowered his voice. Roven Black, you are in the dormitory. You are not alone. The dream shadow flared. Not cured. Anchored. Torric moved to the next. Edrin Vale. Dormitory stone. Pack beside you. Then the next. And the next. The Alpha King walked the rows, naming warriors one by one, while Mara fed silver sand back into their dream roads. His voice roughened before the 10th. By the 20th, the soldiers had begun to lower their heads. By the 30th, some whispered names with him. Carden stood alone in the aisle, his authority bleeding without blood. At the 47th slab, the distant horn broke off mid-note. A crash sounded above. Then shouting. The silver trace leading toward the command tower went bright white. Torric turned toward the arch. A squad captain appeared at the lower stair, breathless, face pale. In his hands lay a second black horn, cracked down the center. We found it in the royal command tower, Majesty. Carden's face emptied. The captain swallowed. No one was there. Mara's cold deepened. Torric took one step toward him. No one? The captain held out the broken horn. Inside its split core, silver sand glimmered around a strip of dark cloth. Not a mask, not a sleeve. A sleeper's command band, marked with Carden's seal. Then the royal wolf shadow behind Torric lifted its head. Not Carden alone, it said. The silver trace on the floor moved again, past the command tower, upward through the keep, toward the Alpha King's private war chamber. The Alpha King's private war chamber had no lamps burning. It did not need them. Moon sleep sand flowed under the door in a thin silver line, bright enough to cut the darkness across the floor. Torric pushed the door open himself. No guard entered before him. No captain spoke. Even Carden Rusk, dragged between two soldiers now, had gone silent in a way that made Mara trust him less. The room beyond was smaller than Mara expected. Not humble. Nothing in the royal keep was humble, but stark. A black stone table, shaped like the northern border. Iron pins marking watchtowers. Red thread stretched across Iron Pine Pass. A rack of sealed war horns along the wall. Maps rolled in wolf-hide tubes. A single narrow bed near the hearth, untouched, its blanket folded too precisely to have held a sleeping man. Mara noticed that first. Torric had not been sleeping here. He had been enduring night in a room built for war. The silver trace crossed the floor and climbed the leg of the war table. Carden found his voice. Majesty, a dreamline entering your chamber proves nothing except that her sand has learned your scent. Mara did not look at him. Moon sleep sand follows the last safe path. If it came here, something in this room helped break it. Torric's face was unreadable, but his royal wolf shadow stood behind him now, half-formed in the doorway, chest still split by black frost. It stared at the war table as if it had been dragged here in sleep before. Mara followed the sand. It moved across the map of Iron Pine Pass, not along the marked army roads, but underneath them, slipping into a narrow seam between two stone plates. Majesty, she said, may I open this? Carden laughed. A rest keeper dismantling the Alpha King's war table. How far will you let this go? Torric looked at him, until it stops bleeding wolves. Then he gave Mara a single nod. She pressed her fingers into the seam. The stone was cold. Too cold for a chamber with a banked hearth. Moonsleep sand gathered around her nails. The hidden plate loosened with a sound like ice cracking under weight. Beneath it lay a shallow compartment lined in black iron. Inside were three things: a bundle of frost root shavings, a measure slate stamped with Carden's War Sleeper mark, and a strip of dark fur clasped in silver. Torric stopped breathing. Mara knew before he reached for it. The fur carried royal scent. Not fresh, not full, a clipped strip, likely taken from a cloak lining, a battle pelt, or a healing bandage. Enough to press the Alpha King's presence into a dream room where he had never stood. Carden said, evidence can be planted. Torric picked up the fur strip. The royal wolf shadow snarled. Not at Carden. At the fur. Torric's hand closed around it. His knuckles whitened. This was from my iron pine cloak. Carden's face stayed careful. Many attendants handled your cloak after retreat. Before retreat, Mara said. The room turned toward her. She pointed to the frostroot shavings. The royal dream showed the drills before iron pine. The strip had to be taken before the cloak came back torn. Carden's jaw tightened. The silver sand rose from the table and formed another vision. This one was smaller than the dormitory images, sharper because the object lay close. The private war chamber appeared as it had been weeks ago. A hooded figure opened the hidden compartment. Carden stood beside the table, holding the black horn. Another sleeper, face masked, pressed the strip of royal fur into a small bronze scent burner. The burner smoked pale gray. Alpha scent filled the old vision. Enough to make sleeping wolves believe Torric had witnessed the horn drills. Enough to make Torric's own wolf believe the fracture belonged to him. Mara looked at the king. The anger on his face was terrible, but underneath it was something worse. Violation. You put my scent into their wounds, he said. Carden answered softly. I put authority where hesitation had left weakness. A soldier cursed under his breath. Carden turned toward the room, no longer pretending innocence. Do you think iron pine holds because wolves are comfortable? Do you think rebel frost packs wait while rest? Keepers count breaths? I gave them a trigger. A clean one. Horn. Rage, kill, that is war. Mara stepped closer. No, that is making them enemies of their own pack. That is making them useful before they die. Torric moved so quickly the guards barely caught Carden before the Alpha King did. Mara stood between them. Not because Carden deserved protection, because Torric did. If you tear him apart now, she said, he becomes the only answer. Torric's eyes burned down at her. He is the answer. He is one hand, the sand said, not alone. The royal wolf shadow lifted its head at her words. Silver grains streamed from the hidden compartment toward the chamber wall. There, behind a rack of war horns, the sand climbed upward and outlined a narrow rectangular panel. Torric shoved the horn rack aside. A concealed slate door opened. Inside lay a row of sleep authority bands. Not one, 7, each marked with a different seal from the War Council. The chamber went airless. Carden's face closed too late. Mara read the nearest band. Rusk. The next. Nerith. The next. Cauldron. Torric took the fourth before she could speak. His mouth tightened. Hale. His own house seal. Not his personal mark. Uldar. Council authority through the royal line. Carden saw the look on his face and struck. Now you see why I said not to open war law in front of soldiers. Your house approved emergency sleeper doctrine. Your council knew what war required. I only gave structure to what your throne demanded. Torric's voice was flat. My throne demanded broken sleep? Your borders demanded victory. Mara looked at the 7 bands, then back toward the open door, where the dormitory waited below them, full of wolves held on silver roads. These are not approvals, they are anchors. Carden's eyes sharpened. Torric turned to her. Meaning? They do not only authorize the drills, they keep the dream trigger tied to command authority. If the bands remain whole, the wolves will keep hearing the rage horns as lawful orders. Another distant horn note trembled through the wall. Not loud. Enough. Far below, wolves cried out in sleep. Mara touched the band marked Hale. Silver sand flared and burned her fingertips cold. Torric reached for it. She caught his wrist. If you break that first, the trigger may run through your wolf. Then who's first? Mara looked at Carden. For the first time, his confidence faltered. The hand that marked the bitter root, she said. Carden stepped backward. The soldiers held him. Mara took the Rusk band from the hidden row and placed it on the war table. The silver sand gathered over it, forming a small road into the metal. Rest law recognizes sleep harm by trace, she said, voice shaking but clear. If this band carried the horn into dream, it must answer before the wolves wake. Carden spat. You have no authority to try a war sleeper. Torric removed the silver wolf skull clasp from his throat again and placed it beside the band. She does now. The Rusk band split. Black frost smoke rose from the crack. And every sleeping wolf in the dormitory below spoke Carden's name. Carden Rusk did not flinch when the wolves spoke his name. That was how Mara knew he still had one more door hidden in the dark. Below the war chamber, 47 sleeping voices carried upward through stone, vents, and old command shafts, not shouting, not accusing like waking men, speaking from the place where memory had not yet been taught to dress itself for court. Carden, Carden, Carden. The Rusk band lay split on the war table, black Fru Heil smoke curling from its crack. Sil land gathered, Bela rounded in a tight ring. Torric's wolf skull clasp rested beside it, bright and cold, giving Mara's rest law the authority Carden had spent years keeping beneath war law. Torric stared at the band. Is that enough? No, Mara said. Carden laughed under his breath. The soldiers looked at her in disbelief. Even Torric turned. Mara hated the answer. But truth had never become stronger because someone rushed it. It proves his mark carried the horn into dream. It does not prove who placed the full doctrine over the pack. Carden's smile widened. Careful, Rest Keeper. You are beginning to sound lawful. Mara looked at him. No, I am beginning to sound awake. Torric's mouth tightened, but something like approval flickered beneath the rage. Mara turned to the hidden row of sleep authority bands. 7 seals, 7 hands that had allowed war to enter rest and call itself readiness. Some might have signed broad doctrine without knowing how it was used. Some might have known exactly enough to look away. If she accused them all the same, Carden would bury himself in shared guilt until no single neck could carry the weight. She picked up the second band. Nerith. Carden's voice sharpened. Majesty, this is beyond dormitory authority. Those bands belong to Council Archive. Torric said. They were hidden in my chamber. They were secured for continuity. They were concealed. Mara placed the Nerith band beside the Rusk band and scattered 3 grains of moon sleep sand over it. Nothing happened. The room held its breath. No smoke, no frost, no dream echo. Clean? A soldier whispered. Mara shook her head. Not clean. Not tied to the horn. She set it aside. Carden's shoulders eased by a fraction. Too soon. Mara tisted Caldron. A faint silver tremor passed over the band, but no black frost rose. Harm approval, she said quietly. Not trigger authority. Torric looked at her. Meaning? They approved harsher sleep discipline. Ugly, dangerous. But this band did not carry the rage horn into the wolves. Carden seized the distinction. You hear her, Majesty. Council doctrine was legal. Mara placed the third band down. Legal does not mean unbloodied. She tested Ver. Clean of black frost. A minor Westhouse seal. Clean. Then she came to the Hale band. The room changed before she touched it. Torric's royal wolf shadow moved closer, pale eyes fixed on the strip of dark metal. The black line in its chest throbbed as if the band had called to it without sound. Carden watched the king's face. Mara saw him watching. There was his final door. If the Hale band answered black, Carden would drag the king's house into the crime so deeply that Torric's choice would become impossible. Condemn the doctrine and weaken his own line, or preserve royal authority and bury the wolves. Mara placed the Hale band on the table. Torric stepped nearer. Do it, he said. She scattered the grains. The band did not split. It screamed, not aloud, but through the dormitory below. Every sleeping wolf arched on its slab. The silver roads flared white. Torric's royal shadow staggered, as if the sound had struck through its spine. Mara slapped both hands over the band. Cold tore through her palms. Images burst upward. The war chamber. A younger Torric, bloodied after his father's death. Asleep in a chair he had clearly refused for too many nights. A healer binding his ribs. Carden standing at the table with 3 counselors. The Hale band lying open beside the Iron Pine map. One counselor said, "The king will not approve rage drills while he can still stand." Carden answered, "Then let the House Seal approve readiness. His wolf will obey what his blood is trained to hear." The vision bent. Carden pressed the black horn to the Hale band. Another hand entered the image and held it steady. Not Torric's. An old hand, wearing the ring of the Royal War Council. The room snapped back. Torric's voice came quiet. "Who?" Carden said nothing. Mara's palms smoked silver where the sand had burned cold into her skin. The Hale band was used without his hand. Carden's jaw tightened, but with his house authority. Torric turned toward him. "Name the counselor." Carden lifted his chin. "If I do, every border house learns your council prepared to manage your wolf without your consent. They will call you unfit before Iron Pine and challenge command before noon." A distant horn shivered through the stone again. This one shorter, closer. The sleeping wolves groaned below. Carden smiled faintly. "You need me." Torric moved so fast the soldiers holding Carden recoiled. But Mara stepped between them first. Not again, she thought. Not rage, answering rage in a room built by it. "Majesty," she said, "if he is killed before he names the hand, the trigger remains lawful somewhere." Torric's eyes burned down at her. "He poisoned my wolves. Yes. He put my scent into their wounds. Yes. He used my house seal to make me their nightmare." Mara's voice softened, but did not weaken. "Then do not become what he taught them to fear." The words hit him in the chest. His royal wolf shadow lowered its head. Torric stepped back. Carden saw mercy and mistook it for weakness. How noble. Mara turned. "You keep thinking restraint means you are safe from it." The silver sand rose from every tested band and gathered around Carden's boots. He looked down. For the first time, he tried to step back. The sand followed. Mara lifted the cracked Rusk band. Rest law recognizes the hand that carried the trigger. If he will not name the hidden counselor, let the dream path show who his mark runs to. Carden shouted, You cannot send sand through a waking mind. No, Mara said, only through a sleeping wound. The wolves below answered with one low breath. Silver roads flowed up through the command shaft, across the war chamber floor, and into the Rusk band in Mara's hand. The band trembled. Black frost smoke pulled from its crack and stretched outward, searching for the next authority linked to it. It moved toward Carden's chest. Not his hand. His chest. Mara looked closer. Under his sleeper coat, something pulsed black. Torric tore the coat open. A hidden command plate was strapped over Carden's heart, thin as bone, marked with 2 seals. Rusk and Hale. The royal wolf shadow snarled. Carden's face twisted. It kept the chain stable. Mara's stomach turned. You wore royal authority against your own heartbeat, to carry what the king was too weak to command. Torric's hand closed around the plate. Carden gasped. Mara grabbed Torric's wrist. Wait. Too late. The plate woke. Every sleep authority band on the table snapped upright. Far below, 47 werewolves began to rise from their slabs. Not awake. Commanded. Carden smiled through pain. Now kill me if you wish, Majesty. My heart already gave the order. The first sleep slab cracked from end to end. Then the next. Then 5 more. Below the war chamber, the werewolf dormitory answered the command plate strapped to Carden Rusk's heart. 47 wolves rose from stone with their eyes open and their minds still trapped behind the Black Horn's order. They did not howl. That would have been easier. They breathed in perfect silence, and the silence had teeth. Mara felt it through the silver roads. Every wolf was standing at the edge of the same command. Kill what is nearest. Torric heard it too. His royal wolf shadow slammed against the war chamber wall, half dream, half command, trying to reach the dormitory before the bodies below tore through soldiers, guards, and each other. Carden smiled with blood on his lips. There is your army, Majesty. Torric's hand tightened around the hidden plate. Mara seized his wrist harder. Do not rip it free. It is giving the order. If you tear it out, the last command completes. Carden's smile widened. That was how she knew she was right. Below them, a soldier screamed, not dying yet, warning. Mara turned toward the command shaft. The silver sand still flowed through it, thin and fraying. She had almost nothing left. The grains had held 47 dreams, mapped false horns, tested draughts, opened sleep bands, and crossed into royal memory. Now they trembled like stars before dawn. Torric looked at her. Tell me. Not command. Trust. The wordless kind. The dangerous kind. Mara swallowed. The plate is using Hale authority through Carden's heartbeat. He made his body the horn. Torric's eyes went cold. Then I withdraw Hale authority. Carden laughed. A king cannot withdraw house command from active war doctrine mid-trigger. The wolves already heard it. No, Mara said softly. They heard it in sleep. The room stilled. Carden's eyes sharpened. Mara turned to Torric. Rest law, not war law. If a command enters through sleep, only rest authority can halt it before waking. Carden snarled. She has no rest authority over royal war doctrine. Torric removed the silver wolf skull clasp from the table and placed it in Mara's burned palm. This time no one spoke. Not the soldiers. Not Carden. Not even the dream shadow. Torric's voice carried through the chamber and down the command shaft. By Alpha Witness, Mara Venn holds rest command over every werewolf in sleep, rage until they wake clean. Carden lunged against the soldiers. You cannot give command to a rest keeper. I already gave command to a butcher, Torric said. Now, I correct it. The clasp grew warm in Mara's palm. Not burning. Recognizing. Silver sand rushed up from the war table, from the cracked bands, from the black horn, from the hidden compartment. Every remaining grain gathered around Mara's wrist, where the horn chain had cut her. The wound stung, then cooled. A thin ring of moonlight formed around the bruise and blood. She did not feel chosen. She felt responsible. That was heavier. Below, the first wolf struck a soldier. Not with claws. With its shoulder, driving him into the wall as if clearing space before the kill. Mara stepped to the command shaft and pressed the king's clasp against the stone. Roven Black, she said. Her voice dropped through the shaft and into the dormitory. The wolf below froze. You are in the dormitory. The horn is false. The order is not yours. A silver road snapped under his feet. Not broken. Repaired. Edrin Vale, dormitory stone, pack beside you. No enemy in the room. Another road brightened. Torric came beside her, his voice rough but steady. Cale Morn, you carried my left flank at Blackmere. You are home. Mara looked at him once. Then they spoke together, name by name, wolf by wolf, not as ritual, not as comfort. As command turned truthful. As rest law, taking back the road war law, had stolen. Below, the wolves trembled. Their claws withdrew from stone. Their dream shadows folded back toward their bodies, not vanishing but returning where wounds belonged before healing could begin. Carden struggled harder. The plate over his heart pulsed black. You will lose Ironpine, he spat. Torric did not stop naming. Let Ironpine wait for wolves who know what they are killing. The royal wolf shadow moved to Mara's other side. Its black frost wound narrowed. Mara saw the final name before Torric spoke it. The 48th. Torric Hale, she said. The king went still. His shadow turned toward her. Mara held his gaze. You are in your war chamber. Not Ironpine, not the drill room, not retreat. Your wolf was used, not guilty. Something broke across Torric's face. Not weakness. Release, too painful to be gentle. His royal wolf shadow lowered its head until its silver muzzle nearly touched the clasp in Mara's hand. The black frost line in its chest split open, and from inside it fell a tiny curl of dark root, no larger than a thorn. Carden's plate cracked. Torric reached for it again. Mara nodded this time. He tore the command plate from Carden's chest. It came free with a sound like a horn choking on its own breath. Carden collapsed to his knees, alive, gasping, stripped of the authority he had worn against his heart. The hail seal on the plate burned away first, then Rusk. Then the black frost root inside it crumbled to gray dust. Far below, 47 werewolves lay down. Awake now, breathing, clean enough to know the faces around them. The dormitory did not cheer. Men who had nearly died beside their own pack did not cheer easily. They wept quietly, or looked away from those who did. Torric dragged Carden to the dormitory before sunrise. Not for execution, for witness. The werewolves stood in skin and fur, wrapped in blankets, shaking with the aftermath of almost becoming monsters in their own home. Mara stood among them, no longer pushed to the wall, the king's clasp still in her hand. Carden knelt on the central aisle where he had scattered her sand. Torric faced the war ranks, captains, council messengers, and every exhausted wolf whose sleep had been treated as expendable. War Sleeper Carden Rusk used black frost root, rage horns, and stolen royal scent to fracture sleeping wolves before Ironpine. He hid behind authority I gave him. That fault is mine to answer for. Carden lifted his head. Majesty, no. Torric's voice cut him silent. Pack, war law changes this morning. No march horn outranks sleep. Rage warning. No bitter root draft is sealed from rest inspection. No war sleeper holds sole command over dormitory waking. Rest keepers stand as necessary command authorities when wolves cannot wake clean. The words moved through the room like sunlight reaching a grave. Mara closed her fingers around the clasp. Torric turned to her before everyone. I removed you from the row when you were the only one keeping them from killing their own. Yes, Mara said. The room heard the answer. He accepted it. I will not ask forgiveness, as if admission repairs harm. His pale eyes held hers. I ask what the wolves need now. Mara looked at the rows, at the cracked slabs, at the black troughs, at 47 warriors who had finally been allowed to look tired without shame. No march today, she said. No horn for 3 nights, clean water, no bitter root, names spoken before sleep, and the Ironpine command rewritten around living wolves, not broken ones. Torric nodded once. Done. Carden was taken away to stand before the war council he had hidden behind. Before dawn fully broke, Mara scattered the remaining moon-sleep sand again, not beneath all the mats in secrecy, but openly, while captains watched and warwolves bowed their heads to receive rest without shame. Torric stood beside the first slab, not touching her, not claiming what she had saved, only holding the silver bowl when her hands shook too badly to carry it alone. At the last row, His royal wolf shadow appeared once more, no longer split by black frost. It looked at Mara, then at Torric, and lowered itself to the stone. For the first time in weeks, the Alpha King's wolf slept, and no one dared call it weakness.